Now it's, well, let's just wait till we get to the election. Canadians will wake up and Canadians will come to their senses.
Is there any chance that might happen? I mean, they're banking on the campaign, right?
Right.
They're banking on his ability as a proven campaigner.
Right.
Is there a chance that they're right?
No.
The fallout continues in the wake of the shattering of Justin Trudeau's ego and his party on Monday, when Chrystia Freeland ran Justin Trudeau over with the Liberal bus for a change. MPs are calling for his resignation. People are criticizing Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. And it seems like more and more people outside of the government are calling for an election so that Canada can stand united against President-elect Trump's impending tariffs.
Let's take a look.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
Hi, Vashi.
Thanks for making the time. So you went out last night and you surveyed Canadians on their reaction to Chrystia Freeland's resignation and what it says in the bigger picture. First of all, were they aware of what happened?
Yeah, so we started this survey at 5 p.m. Eastern, and we finished it this morning. And in that period, 80% of Canadians we surveyed said they were aware of the resignation. Over 40% were following this story at least fairly closely. And so in that short period of time, that's a pretty significant breakthrough for a story in Ottawa that is politics, but was covered all day. You were on air all day. And so Canadians throughout the day probably were getting exposed to this. And that's as big a breakthrough as I've seen in terms of a political story coming out of Ottawa.
And the secondary question, the one that that was sort of spurred on by the resignation, was whether or not the Prime Minister will resign. That's something I know you've been tracking for a long time. What do people feel about his leadership? You've broken it down by party. What did you find after last night? Yeah, well, I mean, when we ask people, should he stay or should he go, basically, 19% of Canadians say he should stay on. But 2/3 say he should resign and the rest are unsure. And most important, I think, is the fact that just over half of those who would vote Liberal today say that the Prime Minister should stay on. So it's not even, there's not even a unified message coming out of his own party supporters. And the fact that he could barely get 1 in 5 saying he should stay on is, I think, an indication for what we've known for a long time, is that the Prime Minister's own favorability, the satisfaction with his government and him personally, were already at a pretty low. I think yesterday's news just pushed a few extra people into the column that probably thought, okay, I think maybe time's up.
So that's pretty significant, folks. So 2/3 of Canadians, if you extrapolate that, are saying, I'm done. And many of those are Liberal voters. So the good news is at least Liberal voters are waking up to the fact that Justin Trudeau is terrible for this country.
Well, better late than never, right?
Well, and, it's hard to criticize a voter that, realizes what's going on, right? Those voters should be encouraged for realizing what's going on. The ones that choose to keep their heads in the sand and are just staunch supporters, there's not going to be much you can do with them. And that kind of makes sense. That's that 20%, right? You're expecting 20% on the far left, 20% on the far right, and 80% in the middle.
I wouldn't even say far left or far right. I would say that they've got their heels dug in on the left or on the right.
Yeah. So that's the first part that we wanted to call out here, is that everybody wants Justin Trudeau to go. But want to go to one of Justin Trudeau's own Liberal MPs, who is not shy about his words about what he thinks about Justin Trudeau coming out of that caucus meeting last night.
Is your sense that there are members of cabinet who also want to see the Prime Minister gone?
Yes.
There
is. I believe there are several. I've had some conversations. Obviously, I'm not going to divulge who I've talked with, but there is no question that there is concern in cabinet. I was amazed yesterday to see ministers come out and say everything's good and we stand behind the Prime Minister, when I think a lot of them absolutely know that to be very different. And you know what, to you, to all Canadians, to our cabinet, I'm calling on all of you to step up, do the right thing, do what needs to be done. We need more ministers to speak up. We know what's happening to our party. I mean, we've been mired in the polls basically third or fourth now for a year to a year and a half. We are not moving, whether it's poly of foreign interference or security clearance or the GST holiday we've had, we're not moving in the polls. And the problem is there's a visceral dislike for the Prime Minister. He needs to accept that.
He's asking on Liberal ministers to stand up and do the right thing.
They've been doing the wrong thing for the past 9 years, and they've been doing it willfully.
Yeah. Just look at this country.
I mean, you can argue that in a third line whip, the backbenchers don't really have a choice. And they don't necessarily have a voice that they can express to either the leader or the cabinet or the whip in terms of, well, no, I don't want to vote this way because. Now, the ministers are a whole different ballgame. They've got Trudeau's ear. So the fact that they've been going along with the destruction of this country for the past 9 years, there's nothing that you can say there. Like, they've done it, and they've done it willingly.
Well, and one of the main, I would say, commentaries on the last quote-unquote rebellion that was going on in Trudeau's party was that, well, cabinet is solid. And if cabinet is solid, then the Prime Minister is not going anywhere. Well, ladies and gentlemen, cabinet is not solid this time because one of the most prominent figures in Liberal cabinet set the whole house on fire as she left. That's Chrystia Freeland. So technically, Chrystia Freeland is now a backbencher.
What's the story, or what's the saying? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned?
Yeah, pretty much. So that's what she did. And you also have Anthony Housefather, who is in cabinet, and he's publicly saying Trudeau should resign.
Do you know, I have some criticism for Anthony Housefather, though, because he was previously saying this about Trudeau, and he was very unhappy with the whole Palestine-Israel conflict and the way that the Liberals were handling it.
He was even talking about crossing the floor.
Yeah, he was speaking out against Trudeau and the government, and then as soon as they handed him a shiny new cabinet position, that all went away.
Right. So, again, I have no applause for any of these Liberal MPs and cabinet ministers. They have voted for every single policy that has turned this country into the disaster that it is. But what we're commenting on is the significance of there's actually people in cabinet that are speaking out against Justin Trudeau, and many of the people that actually came out of caucus that were cabinet members weren't singing Trudeau's praises. They weren't denying anything, but the fact that they weren't coming out and saying, oh, no, everything's fine, I completely support Trudeau. They weren't saying that. Some were, but not all of them. And that's the issue here, right? So there seems to be maybe a Team Freeland versus Team Trudeau thing brewing. Hard to say. But Wayne Long from New Brunswick wasn't done.
Do you think he will?
I think, to be blunt, he's delusional right now. I think that he's living in a false reality, and I think it's incumbent on those around him. It's a disservice to the Prime Minister that they're not telling him what Canadians are thinking or feeling. And, one thing that is abundantly clear to me is the Prime Minister seems to feel that he knows better than the electorate or our party what will happen in the future. And, 2 years back, we heard that we're down in the polls. At that point, I think we were down 8 to 10 points. But it will be okay. We will get through this. Then fast forward to London. We're 15 points down, and we've got a plan. Well, we never really did get a plan. Fast forward to now. We're 20 to 22 points down. And now it's, well, let's just wait till we get to the election. Canadians will wake up, and Canadians will come to their senses.
Is there any chance that might happen? I mean,
No.
they're banking on the campaign, right?
Right.
They're banking on his ability as a proven campaigner.
Right.
Is there a chance that they're right?
No.
Okay, Liberal MP Wayne Long, who is not running in the next election, but still party member, wants to see his party do well.
Well, and he's also part of the Rebel Caucus.
Yeah, and he is, and he's straight up asked, well, is there any chance that Canadians are going to wake up? No, it's not happening.
No, Canadians are done. And that's kind of been our history as voters. We get tired of the government that's in power, and we voted a new one.
Well, and this is, again, I don't have respect for Wayne Long because he's gone along with all of this as well. And Sure, he's a third line whip on these votes, but you still went along with it. But at least he's out talking about reality. He's saying, we can't win.
Right. I mean, they've seen it. We saw it. We looked at the map on Sunday on our live stream, and just everything is blue.
And it's getting
fantastic.
bluer. It's getting bluer.
It
That's
sure
the
is.
thing. So, but at least you have people that are liberal. They're like, look, we're done. We're absolutely done. So it's time to accept reality that we're done. But it sounds like Trudeau, in his narcissism, is like, I can save us. Right. Now, we're going to flip to CBC. Yes, I know. But I'm not interested in what CBC has to say. I'm interested in what their panelists have to say. One is a conservative and one is a NDP type of person. I forget her actual position, but she's not in the current government or anything like that, or as an elected official. But she doesn't mince words for Jagmeet Singh.
I don't disagree. Emily's point, though, about the tectonic shift. Look, Justin Trudeau is deeply unpopular. His cabinet, his deputy prime minister, like all the things we know, he's 25 points back in the polls. If ever there was a moment, to Emily's point, for the NDP to shift their narrative and grab the opportunity, when Michael Ignatieff was crashing into the ground, Jack Layton stepped up, showed leadership. Frankly, bravely struggling in his fight against cancer, and marching down the streets in Montreal and rallying those voters. He seized the moment, and Jagmeet Singh seems utterly incapable of recognizing opportunity when it's right in his face.
I agree with you 100%.
But he acted accordingly, Jack Layton. As Jagmeet tried it a couple of weeks ago, he made his big speech when he broke the agreement. What did he say? He said exactly what, Emily, you wanted to see, that he was vying to become the Prime Minister of Canada. Problem is, he doesn't continue that narrative into action. First chance he gets, he again looks like the broker of a deal with the Liberals. So it's hard for people who would want to believe him that he could be the alternative right now. And I say that in all niceness as an ex-NDP. It's like you have to act prime ministerial if you want to claim that you are vying for it.
So there you go. Everyone sees Jagmeet Singh for what he is. Nobody understands his strategy. And the problem is even if it's not his pension, Tanya has said this over and over again, even if it's not his pension, it doesn't matter anymore.
Because it looks like it's his pension. I mean, we just did a video the other day that showed Peter Julian saying, oh, well, we're going to be prepared to vote non-confidence in late February or early March. Now, I'm paraphrasing. That's not a direct quote. You can check out the video for exactly what he said. But why late February or early March, Peter?
Well, and this is the thing. Is it because, there more people are going to be having access to dental care? Maybe. Is it because the NDP is going to have more money for an election and they won't need to borrow as much? Maybe. We don't know. The problem is you're not saying why you're wanting to wait that long at the same time as Jagmeet is saying Trump is such a threat. We need to deal with Trump. Well, guess what, everybody?
He shows up mid-January.
He shows up on January 20th. And
Parliament sits on January 27th.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the end of February, early March is 5 weeks after Trump is already there. So you're prepared to have 25% tariffs on Canada, on all Canadian goods for 5 weeks, and then you want to go to an election, and then you want to wait between 1 and 2 months for that election to be finished, and then you want the transition of power, and only then do you want to deal with Donald Trump.
Right. So by this timeline, end of February, early March, say a non-confidence vote takes the House down, well, then you have between 37 and 51 days to have the election. Let's go the long route. Let's say, okay, beginning of March, that'll take us through to mid-April, and then you have like a 2 to 3 week turnover between the old cabinet and the new cabinet. So maybe that's the end of April, beginning of May, that we're finally going to have somebody who's able to deal with Trump and negotiate with Trump.
Well, and guess what, folks? Then we have 1 month left until the House rises for the summer?
About a month and a half. Usually they rise like the third week in June, but still, that is not a lot of time for a new government.
Well, and if I'm Pierre and the Conservatives, I'm saying House isn't rising at all, folks.
I don't know if they can do that.
They can have an emergency order to recall people back to Parliament.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
Because, like, hello, if that actually plays out, and 1 month in, the Conservatives are like, okay, taking a vacation now, not a good look. Just saying, not a good look.
No, not at all.
And they could easily pass that because guess what? They will have a super majority at that point.
But you know what? Because we are against misinformation and disinformation, the MPs are not on vacation when they're not in the House. That's Christmas break,
Correct.
That's constituency week, and that's all summer. They are working for Canadians. They're just doing it in their ridings instead of in the House of Commons.
Well, and my argument would be you just spent 2 months or at least a month and a half in your ridings campaigning for an election. You've actually been on your summer vacation or your summertime with your constituents. So it's time to get back to work. That's what my argument would be. So anyhow, that's where, you know, the whole Jagmeet Singh NDP narrative is. It's a fustercluck, as people have a habit of saying. And he's done. Like, he is completely done. Nobody takes him seriously. None of the talking heads take him seriously, and they're saying he is no Jack Layton. Jack Layton had cancer, and he was trying to lead the party and trying to take advantage. Jagmeet Singh is in, by all accounts, great health. He has lots of money, and he's content to just sit there like a dolt. Like,
yeah, but Jack Layton was a true statesman. You know, I don't agree with his politics, but I think you can look at him and go, that's a good politician.
yeah, and you at least believe he cared about Canada, right? So you just didn't agree with how he wanted to manage it. But
Right. Like, heaven forbid the NDP ever got into power, but again, I thought he was a good politician. He was a statesman, you know, he was proper. He wasn't keeping us all hostage so that he could get a pension.
Now, we're not going to let you go without seeing one of Trudeau's closest buddies and a cabinet minister squirm on national TV. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mark Miller.
I do have a number of questions on the plan, if you'll permit me. First, though, to start off with some questions on the Prime Minister's leadership. I know that you are, and I think Canadians are aware, that you have been a supporter of his, and I think it's fair to say a friend as well. Do you still support him as leader of your party?
Absolutely. The next 45 to 60 days are some of the most important in Canadian history, at least in recent history, with the threat of tariffs by the Trump administration. And you saw the announcement today on the border. We need to have a functioning government that is serious and serious about protecting Canadians and their jobs, the economy, as well as the relationship that we have with the U.S. So this is critical. We announced something today that is very important. That's what I'm focused on. And I think that Justin Trudeau is the best person to be able to deliver this to Canadians.
Putting your loyalty to him aside, though, and picking up on the exact point you just made, I mean, the premiers, I listened very closely yesterday to them characterizing what's happening in Ottawa, the questions about the Prime Minister's leadership, the decision by the Deputy Prime Minister. They described it as chaos at a time when, as you just pointed out, that's the last thing this country needs facing the threat from Donald Trump. Is the Prime Minister's insistence on staying in the position at the helm of your party not creating that chaos?
Well, look, I think if you've seen what the premiers have been saying, not entirely coherent over the last week or two, some premiers wanting this, some premiers wanting that. I called Mr. Legault a puck hog. There's a couple other ones that are skating on their ankles.
So, when you need the premiers to work with you to deal with Donald Trump, the best strategy seems to be insult them.
Yeah, give them hockey insults too.
Like,
just call them hosers. Like, come on.
and it was Mark Miller and other Liberals that were calling out Pierre for insulting the mayors of the cities that they were giving all of these hundreds of millions of dollars to as part of the housing subsidy that doesn't actually go to build homes, aka Sean Fraser. Thank you very much. But this is the guy that's saying that. And guess what? all the premiers, they've been like, okay, well, the only person that it can really lead Canada on this issue is the person in charge of the federal government, because, you know, they're kind of in charge of that thing called the border. So they needed Justin Trudeau to show leadership and move forward on this. But he hasn't, because his party is in utter chaos. So the premiers have had to say, well, I guess we're solving this on our own.
But how? What are they going to do about it?
They're trying to organize their municipal and provincial resources to actually protect the border. Like,
how?
That's the ridiculous thing in this. So,
none of this makes sense.
Well, when Justin Trudeau isn't doing anything, they're trying to do whatever they can, and that's the problem here. So, but we're not done.
In a unified team, that's right. And I believe that Justin Trudeau at the helm of that provides Canadians the best option to counteract and fight back the Trump tariffs. They know what we bring to the table, and we need to focus on the next 45 to 60 days. I don't think anyone wants to be in an election, Vashi, where with tariffs being imposed and the functional inability of the Canadian government to actually fight back. Like, let's think about that for a second. So people may want an outcome, whether it's in caucus or outside caucus, but let's focus the mind and the task at hand in the next 45 to 60 days, and that's what I've been entirely focused and will continue to be focused on over the next 2 months.
So if you caught it, Miller just said something very significant there. I don't know if he meant to or not. I don't think he meant to. I think he was just, you know, in his arrogance and in his seemingly, you know, lust for kind of talking down to people. It seems to be a liberal trait. He had said, you know, it doesn't matter what people want, whether it be in caucus or outside of caucus. So sounds like there is a significant amount of people inside of caucus that are not happy with Justin Trudeau, based on that statement. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it.
Based on that statement, it seems like it's Trudeau's way or the highway, because if you're in caucus or outside of caucus and you don't want what he wants, well, too bad.
Yeah, too bad. But he also said, well, you know, do we want to be dealing with an election and, you know, a government's inability to function? Mark.
You guys haven't been able to function for 2 solid months.
Yeah. Have you not been paying attention since October 2nd, 2024, when the House has been seized since then with the SDTC scandal? And guess what, Mark? When you come back in January, nothing changes.
Well, and that's the thing, that they would rather lose 2 solid months of legislative days instead of give over these documents to the RCMP. This is not a, well, it's the principle of the matter here type thing. This is, we don't want to give over those documents because there must be something in those documents that are worth losing 2 solid months of legislation.
Just one more question on this, because I take your point on the necessity of a united front. But, you know, it's not me making up what your caucus colleagues are saying. Like, they're freely saying it to reporters in front of cameras. They do not have confidence in the leadership of Justin Trudeau. How are you as a country, how are we as a country expected to present that united front, or the Prime Minister expected to command it of premiers, if he can't even garner it among his own caucus?
Well, look, I'll concede this, Vashi. We do need to stiffen up a bit.
We need to stiffen up a bit.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, your party is in turmoil. Allegedly, the numbers are up to 60 people that have come together in the Liberal caucus to say Trudeau's done.
That's over a third.
Yeah. It's and with the by-elections whittling away at these seats, you know, it's getting closer and closer to half. Like, dude, we have to stiffen up a bit. Okay.
But okay, let's look at who this is coming from. Mark Miller was one of Justin Trudeau's wedding parties, so he's very, very close to the Prime Minister. And I think he's one of those guys that will do whatever Trudeau says, just, you know, no forethought, no thinking, just, yes, sir, Mr. Prime Minister, I'll get that done for you.
Well, his paycheck is tied to Justin Trudeau, so why wouldn't he?
We've been a caucus that's been known to talk, and I think that's probably a good thing. It'd be nice to stay in the family, but caucus is allowed to share different views. Pierre Poilievre may be an irritating SOB, but he has a an iron lock control on his caucus. That is irritating, and it will grind. So
now he's insulting. He's literally calling Pierre Poilievre an SOB. I think
That's unparliamentary.
I think Pierre is irritating. I think the Conservative caucus is irritating to every person in the Liberal Party, because Pierre doesn't have this like iron lock on his caucus. He has a united caucus.
Well, and that's the thing. You have all these Conservative MPs, and you've got all these Conservative nominees who aren't MPs yet, but are going to be running in these ridings. And they're all working towards a common goal, which is to make Canada better.
Right. The main difference between the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, aside from the platform, is the fact that Pierre doesn't have a third of his caucus in open rebellion. All of his caucus, and they all have varying different views on varying different policies, but all of them understand that right now the game is get Trudeau out, and Pierre Poilievre is going to be the best shot we have at doing that. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to do what I'm told, because so far everything that we're doing is working. So that's called a disciplined caucus, united behind their leader.
Well, and it's great because, I mean, with the MPs that we're able to interact with, we see how much they enjoy each other's company. Like they work very well together in committee, in the House, but even when no cameras are around, like they're friendly with each other.
They have nicknames for each other.
Yeah, it seems like a very positive place to be, which is inside the Conservative caucus. I don't think you could say that about the Liberal caucus.
Well, and to Vashi's point, like never mind the platforms, right? Just look at the state of the two parties. Doesn't even matter what they represent. The state of the two parties. Who do you want dealing with Donald Trump? Do you want one that is like literally in chaos? It seems like every other month something happens within their party and someone drops a bomb that just shatters everything, and Justin Trudeau, you know, he doesn't even put it back together. He just like whistles and slowly walks away and hopes that nobody will even notice. Or do you want the Conservative Party right now that is itching to get into government with a fresh mandate, completely united, and is going to be laser focused to ensure that they are delivering on that mandate that they've been preaching to Canadians for the last 2 years? Doesn't matter the platform, just the state, the unified state that you want to be dealing with another country. It's the Conservatives all the way.
Yeah, it's like departments in an organization. If you have one department that they're not cooperating with each other, they don't like working together, it's really hard to get anything productive out of that department. But if you have another department who's working really well together, they all know what the goal is, and they're all working together towards that goal, well, they're going to be a very productive department.
And there's an official term for that in organizations. That's called a high-performing team, and that's actually a term. Sounds pretty chintzy, but
it does.
It's actually a term.
Different styles. Sure, the Prime Minister is being criticized for what's gone on in the last couple of days. He's a big boy, he can take it. But I think we need to make sure that we're focusing on the next 45 to 60 days, because no government deserves to be in place if we can't focus on the next 2 months, which are so critical to the course of the future and jobs of Canadians over the next year, frankly, over the next 4 years.
Just to be certain, though, you think that different members of your caucus saying the Prime Minister should not be the Prime Minister, you just count those as just disagreements? Like, I think to Canadians, it's a lot more substantial than that.
They're entitled to their view. Vashi, they have aired it over the last couple of months on different occasions. I've been quite critical of some of these outbursts. What I've really required of folks as part of the team is to keep it in caucus. We need to be a unified team. I think we can present that. Surely, without betraying what was discussed in caucus yesterday, indeed, I think the camera saw a shot of the back of my head obstructing the view. But what we did talk about was having a unified front with respect to fighting the threat that is Pierre Poilievre to this country. I think he would roll over in front of Donald Trump, frankly, and you won't see that from Justin Trudeau. This is a choice, and certainly we don't want to be in an election at a time where Trump will be reimposing tariffs with the functional inability of the government to do anything.
You're talking about a guy who spent his entire political career confronting people, getting in their face, calling out their crap. You think that's the guy that's just going to become a puppy dog and roll over for Donald Trump? Really?
Okay, but to be fair, as the leader of the opposition, Pierre's current job is to oppose. When he becomes prime minister, his job will be to lead the country. So, you know, it's slightly different, but I think the fact that he has that experience as the opposition is going to help him when he's negotiating with Trump.
Well, but I'm also going back to when he wasn't leader of the opposition. I'm going back to when he was actually one of the, you know, the leads questioning Justin Trudeau on the We Charity scandal. And he went after him. Like he was taking no prisoners. He went after him to call him out. So, yeah, I think he'll be more prime ministerial when he talks to Donald Trump. But the main difference here is it's going to be a completely different conversation when it comes to Pierre and Donald Trump. Pierre's going to be like, Donald, listen, we both want the same things. We want industry to flourish. You know, we have resources that we would love to export to you. We're not going to be able to do that if you put a 25% tariff. So we both win if you don't give us the tariffs, and let's work on a different type of deal. That's the conversation that is going to go on between Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump. So, like, the roll over. Justin Trudeau went down there to Mar-a-Lago and got insulted and then came back and had nothing to show for it except a tweet calling us the 51st state.
I was going to say all he had to show for it was Donald Trump constantly trolling him. He did another one the other day.
Yeah, and then he trolled Chrystia Freeland today. So, like, hello? Who's the one that's rolling over for Donald Trump? Who's the one that couldn't, you know, stand up to him when Donald Trump was in the room and waited till Donald Trump left to then run in front of a microphone to say, this is how tough I am in front of Donald Trump? And Donald Trump was like, what? This guy said something completely different to me. You're a little punk. So, Mark, don't even. Okay? Don't even. Canadians know the polls are in, the time is up, and, like, Justin Trudeau, he's not going to last until the summer. Some people think he's not even going to last past Christmas.
I guess we'll see.